There's a point at which taking responsibility for things means basically that even if it's not your fault, like somebody else did something that was completely beyond your control, or it was an act of God, or whatever it might be, if ultimately it falls on you to apply wisdom and find the best way forward, that's 100% your responsibility at that point. Whatever else proceeded in the moment now, going forward, it is our responsibility to say, okay, I had no control over how I came to be here. The only thing I did was engage in a relationship, or show up at a place, or decide to get in my car and drive that day, whatever it was. There's that, if you trace it back, yes, you brought yourself to that place. But in the way that you didn't intend to get in that car accident, or have someone break your heart, or whatever it might be, it's not that you designed that, but you brought yourself to that place. This is what happened in that context. If it was completely 100% beyond your power that it happened, it still remains 100% in your power to choose what happens next. How do you take this on? How do you process the emotion? How do you interpret the story? How do you relate to the story? How do you, from that, extract the wisdom to know what's best going forward? And it may not be fair, because we might have to shoulder additional consequences. So let's say it's a person hurts us, and we bought them a gift or planned a surprise, and before they hurt us, it was like, oh, I can't wait to do this, I'm really looking forward to giving them this gift or this surprise or whatever it might be. And then ultimately what they do breaks your heart and damages the relationship. Yeah, it's still on you to say, look, then I'm not going to get to enjoy the privilege, the pleasure of like giving something with my heart that I was excited about, that was going to make me feel good too. I have to fall back and regroup. You can do something later when things are resolved, certainly, but it's important to realize that if you got in a car accident, somebody T-bones you in an intersection where you had the right of way, okay, but still you're the one who has to go to physical therapy and rehab and get yourself walking again. That's unfortunately the truth. That's 100% on you. The person who hit you can't go to your physical therapy and make you stronger again. It just doesn't work like that. So whatever it is we're doing, it's important to realize that it's not enough just to bear what comes our way that is effectively beyond our control, but to also take control of what happens next as like the second blow of sorts. But we don't have to take it on as additional suffering. We don't have to say that, this is because I'm a bad person and I don't deserve any better. It doesn't have to be because the universe is unfair and it hates me. It doesn't have to be any of these other crazy stories. Oh, look, I can't trust people. People are all bad and they're always going to hurt me. These things paralyze us. They absolutely take us out of our power and they trap us in another way. There will be a consequence one way or the other. Whether we tell the story of this thing happened to me, this was the impact of this. This is how I felt about it and what I did about those feelings. Now the story I tell myself is that the power's back to me and I have responsibility. I have agency here. I can act in my own best interests and in the interests of others as well. And I don't have to take it on as a personal affront or evidence that life's not fair or I'm unworthy. None of this. It's if you want to tell that story to ostensibly defer pain or deflect accountability and say, well, it's not my fault, this just happened to me. Okay, but now you're going to take on the consequence of being a victim, a powerless victim at the mercy of whatever may happen to you. Instead of saying, no, you know what, I'm a person moving through a complex world, a complex, dynamic plane of existence where shit happens. And it's for me to take that and to turn it into fertilizer, right? And say, I'm going to grow something else here. Because in that, even though there's the consequence of added responsibility, added work, added loss, added disappointment, whatever it might be, in stepping to that in real time in a timely fashion at least, and seizing it under our own authority, we can say, okay, I'm not powerless, I'm not helpless, I have influence here, and I don't have to compound the suffering. I can just lean into it for a little while longer, push all the way through to the other side, and be where ultimately the reward is. Some of the only closure you're going to get is going forward. Some of the only peace you're going to get is from that, through that. And you build strength, and you reinforce the idea that there is possibility, there is power in moving into that which you could easily say, it's not my fault, I'm not responsible for that. But in saying that you will do that, it's putting the odds back in your favor. And this is a little woo, but I think when you go out into the world with the mindset that, yeah, I actually can marshal my resources, I can actually confront my own emotional states and manage them, I can actually have an impact on what happens next and shape my world around that. It always feels to me like unseen forces conspire to support that. And when there's an abdication of power and responsibility, then it ends up being that life conspires to reinforce these ideas that, excuse me, one moment, reinforce the idea. It's sort of like you look for an electron and it appears, you look for a problem and it appears, you look for a solution, it appears, right? And so you actually get to kind of put a thumb on the scale and like tilt things in your favor in that way. So it ends up being far less consequence and far more reward, just to simply say, okay, well, this is where I am and this sucks and I'm sad about it, but I'm consulting the better part of my wisdom and saying, look, here's how I'm going to go forward, and I'm going to get focused on that, and I'm going to get engaged in that, and simply in putting focus on that, it's a few steps ahead. So I struggle with this because I too would love to be like, well, it's not my fault, I didn't do this, it was her that did it. Shush. Think about this. You entered into a relationship with another human, or you did drive your car, or you did do this thing. You brought yourself to that place, and what happened. And if you leave it at that and then pick up the rest as your own portion and tend to it, the outcomes are exponentially better. It's not, you know, oh, it's a little bit better if you do it. There's still consequence, there's still suffering, but that much, not all of the suffering, all of the consequence, compounded again and again over time through this reinforcement of this sketchy idea that things just happen to us. And yes, in a moment things do just happen to us, but beyond that, we happen to it. Yeah? So anyway, those are my thoughts on why I listen to people talking about personal responsibility and radical responsibility and radical acceptance and all of these things. Yep, I'm finding myself again in a situation where adopting that perspective allows me to have clarity and some sort of peace, or at least some sense of accord within myself. I want things to be harmonious and not dissonant when I'm engaging with them. I want my actions to extend from that sound place rather than distraught, emotional, resentful, whatever other state it could be, because that also shapes the results as far as I can make out. And it's sad, it's very sad, and that's okay, but it's only going to be sadder if I don't take a hold of it and steer it in a direction where I'm trying to move and prefer to be. Okay, so that's my piece on personal responsibility, and I'm sticking to it. Okay.